Good afternoon. Welcome to today's installment of our hurricane preparation and recovering webinar, talking about preparing for the storm. We're going to share some good tips on preparations that you can do to get yourself and your property ready for a hurricane that could be on its way later on in the season. Also be talking about some resources that you can take advantage of and some important contacts that you can make in order to get connected to the network and to available assistance that can help you in a great deal after a hurricane hits. For those that don't know me, this is Chris Demers. I'm an extension program manager at the School of Forest, Fisheries, and Geomatics Sciences at the University of Florida. I run our Florida Land Steward program, and the purpose of that program is to help and encourage private landowners to actively manage their lands for multiple benefits. And usually that entails some type of agricultural forestry production, kind of combined with conservation, wildlife habitat, and things like that. More than likely, you've heard about this webinar through our email updates that we send. Welcome to the program. A couple of housekeeping things today. Please use the Q&A function in the Zoom in the Zoom panel there to ask questions. Try to keep the chat clear. If you have urgent things that you want addressed, you can use the chat for that, but I'll be using the Q&A function to answer questions after the presentation. Please provide feedback about the webinar. There'll be a very short evaluation that launches in your browser after the webinar, and then tomorrow there'll be a link that's sent out that has a link to that survey. So it'll be an email with a link. If you can take a couple minutes and fill out that survey, that would be a great help. Presentation slides and other materials associated with this webinar are available on our Land Steward website. And I'll show you exactly how to navigate to that. If you go to our homepage, if you Google Florida Land Steward, this is one of the top pages that'll show up. And right at the top of the homepage there, that last item, recordings, links, and materials for webinars, just click on that there, and that will take you to the page, and then the 2023 events are right at the top, and that's where you can access the materials for the website, or excuse me, for the webinar. That's also where we will post the recording of this webinar, so you can watch it later, or share it if you need to. All right, references used to put this presentation together. This is a similar presentation that I did back in 2021 for that hurricane season. Made a couple of updates to this one, a couple of improvements. This Pine Forest Landowner's Guide is a good resource if you've got forest property in the Southeast managing pines. This is a good resource. We've also got a relatively new publication on preparing your forest property for hurricane season that's available now, and there's the link to that. My presentation slides will be or are now available on that site that I discussed before, so you can get all these links in that document. This is kind of the conceptual framework of that Pine Forest Landowner's Guide. It starts with your initial site planning when you're kind of looking for land, assessing your risk based on where your property is and what the risks are associated with the location of that property relative to storms. And then it goes from building a resilient operation, which really starts at the beginning with your management planning, your forestation methods, reforestation methods, your long-term plan, right species to right site, and planning for success in your forest stands is really going to help with the resilience of your operation. In this webinar, we're going to be referencing that, but we're going to be focusing more kind of to this long-term maintenance and short-term preparedness, things that you do, a week or two before the storm is coming to get things ready, get batten down the hatches and get ready for the storm. And then post-hurricane recovery is the last section of that guide. And we'll be referencing all parts of that, but focusing on kind of this section 2 and 3 of this framework. Well, when we're talking about hurricanes, we really want to start at the beginning, and that's really making sure that you, your family, your home are prepared for the storm. You always want to start there, getting your essentials ready. University of Florida and Sea Grant has prepared a nice website, kind of a clearinghouse of all kinds of information about preparing for disasters, hurricane fires, and things like that. Getting your emergency information together, signing up for emergency alerts, knowing your evacuation zone and the route. If your property, if your home is on a close to the coast, when there's a storm coming, you're going to want to know exactly where you need to go to get to safety. And you also want to have a plan for your family to get to that route and to get to safety and or shelter as quickly and efficiently as possible. Have your evacuation kit ready, supplies for at least 72 hours. We had a tax-free holiday, so to speak, from May 27th through June 9th. Get hurricane supplies tax-free. Well, Demers, that's a lot of help. That was last week that ended. But good news is there's a second 2-week tax-free hurricane supplies period between August 26th through September 8th. So take advantage of that next window where we can get hurricane supplies. We're looking for things like flashlights, batteries, pet supplies, hygiene products for the family, radios, fuel tanks, generators, all kinds of things. There's a big list of things that qualify for that tax-free purchase at that floridarevenue.com/disaster prep. You can get to that full list at that link. All right, thinking back to that conceptual framework about preparing for a hurricane, and that kind of starts with assessing where you are and what the risk is for a storm. Suffice it to say, if you live in the South, in Florida, coastal plain over to Texas and up into the Carolinas, you're pretty likely to experience some kind of a tropical disturbance in your lifetime or in your tenure in this area, especially this time of year. Those red dots indicate pretty high frequency of a major hurricane with winds 110 miles per hour and greater. So, talking a category 2 and 3 storm that hits, and those are going to be more frequent where those red dots are historically. Suffice it to say that if you're anywhere on the peninsula or the panhandle can experience a significant storm, keep in mind that strong hurricanes, especially those category 3s and 4s that come in, can travel across the peninsula, across the panhandle. Sometimes they can even loop around and come back for another hit. So you want to be ready if you're in these areas. And with climate change, we're going to see the severity and frequency of storms increase quite likely. So we might see some of those yellow dots turn red and some of those green dots turn yellow over time. So the long and short of it is be prepared. Know your site characteristics, where your property is, know the flood risk and the storm surge risk. And there are some really good resources out there from FEMA and NOAA, and that floridadisaster.org have some very useful maps where you can locate your home and or your property and assess the risk for flood and storm surge. If it's close to the coast, chances are pretty likely that you could have some storm surge influence at the property. Definitely have an idea of that before the storm hits. This kind of goes back to the building a resilient operation. And we're talking here about forest inventory, sometimes called a timber cruise, which is basically having some measurement of the forest conditions and what's in your forest. So some measurement of trees, tree density, tree species, things like that. This can help us to get a snapshot of what the forest looks like, forest growth over time, can give us an idea of what value there is. So if a storm does hit, you've got an idea of the loss economically and physically that's taken place in that stand, and help you to get assistance and get tax assistance, insurance assistance as that applies. Tammy Cushing gave an excellent webinar on June 1st. We've got that recorded about the casualty loss tax benefit. The details about that are in that webinar. I'm not going to be going into that at all today, but I encourage you to watch that webinar if you didn't, to get up to speed on that. But consider a forest inventory, especially if timber production, forest production is a really high priority in your management plan, in your objectives for your property. These extension publications linked down here give good information on what exactly is in forest inventory, what's included, and also how to conduct a forest inventory, what goes into it, how to take some of those measurements and how to use those measurements to estimate what you have, some of the value associated with that as well. All right, operations, and this is gets into, I guess, a little bit of more of the short-term planning within weeks or so of the storm. One thing we've learned is that open stand structure associated with a thinning, or that can be left after a thinning, those trees can be much more susceptible to wind throw and damage. So if there's a thinning operation planned or underway, you're going to want to postpone that, shut it down while that storm goes through, to try to protect the trees in that stand, and minimize the wind throw and damage that could occur after those trees are opened up. Infrastructure is really important, especially roads and drainage. As we've learned, slow-moving storms can produce large amounts of rainfall. We have heavy rainfall even with thunderstorms that aren't associated with hurricanes, and can experience some of these things even with strong thunderstorms. But we want to make sure before major storms hit, especially strong hurricanes, slow-moving hurricanes, that our ditches, culverts, drains are clear, to make sure that excess water doesn't back up and cause flooding like what we see here. Roads and drainage, again, want to check for signs of erosion and prevent those, fill in any holes, ruts, ditches, gravel, erosion that's already taken place. Try to do your best to repair those types of things, because they'll be impacted and made worse by flooding caused by a storm. This concept of daylighting, which is kind of shown in this picture here, where we're removing trees and vegetation that are within 6 to 10 feet of the road edge. And this allows that road to dry much more quickly than if it was left in the shade, and also reduces the trees and vegetation that could fall across that road with high winds. So protecting against excessive flooding, excessive water, and protecting against windfall as well. You always want to make sure when you're building roads and conducting all your forest operations that you're following the best management practices. Best management practices are guidelines that are administered by the Florida Forest Service. And these guidelines are kind of the minimum standards to protect water quality So if you've got streams, wetlands, lakes, you've got major rivers on or near your property, ephemeral streams, things like that, there's measures that we can take to protect those water bodies and that water flow and the water quality. So these best management practices really, really important. And there's guidelines for roads, for silvicultural operation, for harvesting, for pesticide application. All of these things can help us be much more resilient in a storm. So follow those. Alabama Cooperative Extension System has a really good forest roads and construction publication, which gives all kinds of guidelines about constructing roads, broad-based dips, things you can do to protect roads from damage from heavy rains, water flow, things of that nature. All right, short-term preparation, getting into some things you can do. Take a look around and see if any trees need pruning. You know, you can trim hazard trees if there's branches over structures, over fences, over roads, over bridges, over any of your infrastructure on your property. It's a good idea to go ahead and trim those best you can to minimize damage that could result from wind throw, broken limbs, and so forth. Make sure your tanks are filled. It's a good idea to have your fuel, water, anything you need that you're probably going to need after the storm for recovery efforts, to have those filled up and ready to go. And that can also help with minimize these things blowing around, because if they're empty, they're light, they could move a lot easier. So filling them up can help make them available and help keep them in place as well. Have your emergency equipment good condition and ready to go. Your generators, chainsaws, trimmers, air compressors, have all those things in good working condition before the storm hits. Communications, if you're going to be working with family and friends and others on recovery efforts after the storm, to communicate with people, good idea to have all your batteries charged, have your handheld radios, if you've got them, if you use those, have those located, ready to go, charged up, batteries, have your communications equipment prepared and ready. You should always be storing our chemicals or pesticides, herbicides, insecticides, fuel, all those types of things should be kept in storage. If that can be locked, all the better. Make sure that all those materials are stored before the storm. This really goes without saying at all times. Those materials should always be kept in a safe place. If you got gasoline pumps on the property, fuel pumps, diesel pumps, etc., those should be shut down. All right, it's a good idea. I mean, this I guess this is common sense, but it's a good idea to get the gates all locked on the property. Make sure before you leave the property, if you're going to leave the property before the storm hits, that it's secure. We don't want unauthorized people entering. They could be injured. If people are driving around on the wet roads, they're going to cause damage to those roads, which is going to be costly to repair. Hazardous conditions associated with down limbs, down lines, all those things we want to try to minimize. We want to minimize the risk of injury to people that could be on the property. So make sure that your gates are locked and you've got signs posting those entrances. Documentation, to take pictures of your forest stands, and from good reference points, things that are like corners where you can tell where that photo is taken, where you've got a pole or a fence or some kind of a marker that's stationary, and you can tell where that photo is. Take those. It's a good idea to have a documentation of what your stands look like before the storm, so that if you have damage from the storm, you can show that in photographs. Pictures are worth 1,000 words, right? So it's a good idea to have a record of the condition of the stands before and after. Get organized, right? Let's have all of our business records all in place. The importance of organization in this respect cannot be overstressed. As we've learned from past storms, disaster recovery is likely not going to be available for months. So it's a really good idea to have all your records kept and in a safe place, so that the losses sustained can be recorded and documented and kept. Also keep track of your recovery efforts, your cleanup efforts, especially if that costed money and time. Get your insurance in order. Review your policies, make sure you have adequate coverage. Is flood insurance included? Sometimes it is, sometimes it's not. These are big issues now that are in the news about insurance. It's getting increasingly difficult to get good insurance, but be aware of the limitations, and generally keep in mind that insurance policies won't cover damage if the policy was not in place before the hurricane formed. So that's an important guideline there. So make sure you've got insurance well before hurricanes are starting to develop in the tropics. Some may have timber insurance, and there's generally two types. Insurance for standing timber that helps offset losses from damage in mature timber stands that are marketable and could be due for harvesting. And then there's also reforestation insurance that can help the landowner replant stands that were non-marketable when the storm hit and lost to wind and all other types of disasters. So if you've got that timber insurance, understand what you have and what it covers. And again, sometimes that coverage doesn't apply if it's not in place before the storm hits. We talked about the inventory. It's a good idea to have that in a safe place. Keep copies of all of your records, important records, inventory in multiple places on your computer, in a waterproof file box, on a cloud-based server. Our family has a waterproof box with all of our birth certificates in it, our passports, insurance, all those records that we want to have ready to go in case there's a disaster, and it's protected from water damage. And again, take pictures of stands before and after the storm. Really important. All right, emergency planning, things that you can do to get on top of the situation. So some important websites out there. The NOAA Hurricane National Hurricane Center website is my source. That's where I go first when I hear if there's a hurricane coming. Get all the information you need about that storm, the cone of influence, where it's going, how strong it is. Those predictive models are useful. They're not completely dependable and they're always changing, but it gives you an idea of what could be in store when there's a storm developing in the tropics. Really good idea to keep an eye on that. And of course, it's a good idea to connect to emergency alerts. That ready.gov website is a great place to go. You can get connected to emergency alerts. For example, I'm connected to emergency alerts in my area. So I'll get a text and sometimes an email when there is a weather alert, if there's a hurricane or a tornado, strong thunderstorm, things of that nature. I'll get an alert on my phone that lets me know that there is a severe weather alert, warning, a watch, etc. Good idea to connect to those so you're in the know. You can also get those with phone calls. You can sign up to get phone calls. You can sign up to get emails. They've got multiple ways that you can get the alerts. All right. Connections with people that are there to help you. This is really important. So, especially if you've got forest lands, whether there's, regardless of hurricane situations or disasters, it's a really good idea to have these connections with the resource professionals that are available in your area. Many of these are state and federal organizations, and they have local county agents that are available to help. So in Florida, we have the Florida Forest Service, the State Forestry Agency, which is directed by the U.S. Forest Service. We have county foresters. These are the senior foresters that operate at the county level. Many of them cover multiple counties. Get to know that person. They have great connections, great resources. They have a lot of know-how. They can give you some good information about land management. And they're really on the front line of getting connected and informed about assistance after a disaster. So they're a good person to know. And being prepared is a part of that. Your BMP forester, your best management practices forester, there's a couple in the state. One covers the peninsula and the other covers the panhandle. I believe there's two now. Anyway, that person is great for helping you with roads. If you have any questions about your compliance with best management practices, the design of your road, your design of your culverts, anything like that having to do with drainage and roads relative to hurricane preparation, it's a really good idea to get in contact with them. They can help you out and give you some good pointers. Our organization, the University of Florida, IFAS, we have county agents that are out there in every county. There's Sea Grant agents, multiple county agents, resource professionals that are there to help you. Got agriculture, natural resource agents. We have family, youth, and community sciences faculty that are out there to help with this type of planning, disaster preparation. So take advantage of those resources as well. Your county extension agents. Florida Fish and Wildlife Commission has landowner assistance biologists for your wildlife management needs. They are also well informed and connected to recovery assistance resources as well. USDA Natural Resource Conservation Service. Your district conservationist usually covers multiple counties in a district. They are an excellent source of cost share program information, conservation easement programs. They are also connected with disaster recovery. And probably most importantly, after a disaster is your USDA Farm Service Agency agent. And it's really important to get connected to them well before the storm. Really good idea to make their acquaintance as soon as you can, so that you can get connected to the resources they have available. Most importantly, their disaster recovery programs. They have many types of disaster recovery programs. The one most relative to forestry is the Emergency Forest Restoration Program. Often after a hurricane, or even after a wildfire, after a disaster, those funds are authorized for the state, for the area hit by the storm. And it's a really good idea to get your farm records filled out ahead of time so that you can be on the fast track to getting connected with that funding, that assistance. Don't wait until after the storm to make that contact and get your paperwork done, because there will be a backlog and you're going to be at the end of the line. So get at the front of the line, make that connection early. If you do get those that paperwork filled out, there's a few forms. If you fill out your farm records, get those filled out, then you'll be signed up for e-notifications. You'll get email updates about available assistance opportunities from the Farm Service Agency, and as well as the other USDA agencies like the NRCS, or the Natural Resources Conservation Service. Really good idea to get connected early and get your forms filled out. And it's good. And that link right there, farmers.gov .gov. Connect is a good place to just to make that happen. Other professionals that are they're useful and good idea to have in your pocket. If you're managing forest land and forestry, and timber is a big priority, chances are pretty good you're working with a consulting forester, and of course they assist in all phases of management. They're often connected to recovery resources, in the know about recovery resources after a storm. Of course, they're connected also with the contractors, loggers, silvicultural contractors that are actually doing that work after the storm. So really good idea to be working with a consulting forester, especially if timber is a high priority and you have a lot of value in timber. We've got a pretty good publication there about selecting a consulting forester. In Florida, we do not have a registered forester program. We don't have a licensing program for foresters. So there are some other credentials that you can look for when hiring a forestry consultant. A couple of those are shown there. The Society of American Foresters, they have a certified forester program. There's also the Association of Consulting Foresters, which is a national organization, and they have different state chapters. There's one in Florida. And there's some other things that you can look for when hiring a consultant. Make sure that they're connected to the network. That's really important. Are they members of the Florida Forestry Association? Are they members of the Farm Bureau? Are they active? Are they keeping up with their continuing education? That's really what these credentials help you to determine, if they're keeping up with their continuing education. So those are some tips on selecting a consulting forester. And a part of that, knowing your consulting forester, can really help you to get connected with the larger industry that operates in Florida and in other states as well. The Georgia Forestry Association, Alabama has a forestry association. I think just about every state has a forestry association. This is a great network to get involved with. Go to their annual meetings, go to their local meetings. You can get to know the consultants, the loggers, the contractors, some of these other professionals that we talk about, the county foresters, the fish and wildlife biologists. They're also involved in the Forestry Association. So it's a good forum, good place to get involved and get connected to some of these people. You know, in this business of forestry, especially after a hurricane, it's not what you know, it's who you know, and who can help you get cleaned up and get recovered and as quickly as possible. If you do have a timber operation or you do have land, good idea to get certified, and a really good opportunity for certification in this part of the world is the tree farm program. There's the American Tree Farm System. Properties that are certified in the American Tree Farm System, they have that sign. And the products that come off of those certified properties are a part of a chain of custody of the Sustainable Forestry Initiative, and also the program for the endorsement of forest certification programs. That chain of custody ensures that that material is sustainably sourced and processed, and then at the end of that process on the shelves, they come with a label. So wood that comes off of certified tree farms has that SFI label on it, also has that PEFC label at the end. So when consumers buy a box of Kleenex or a magazine or a piece of lumber, anything that comes from wood, a wood product, it can have that certification label, and that communicates to consumers that product was sourced and processed in a sustainable way. If questions about the tree farm program, we have a Florida chapter or a Florida group, Florida Tree Farm Program. You can get connected with those resources. I'm involved with that group as well. So if you want information about that, you can contact me as well. All right, that concludes my presentation. I think there's only one other person that is on this webinar today. If you've got any feedback or any questions, I am wide open. I will keep this webinar alive as long as you wish to chat or and have questions. See anything? So thank you for joining. I do want to encourage you to please fill out that evaluation that's going to pop up in your browser, and that will also the link to that survey will also be emailed. So if you can fill that out, that would be great. Again, the materials and these slides are available on our website at that link. Again, the navigation to that on our website, once you get to the homepage, Google Florida Land Steward, UF, go to that fourth item down, links, materials, recordings, and everything is there. I want to thank all of our partners and supporters. All these organizations support this program either financially or morally or materially, intellectually. These are really, really important partners, natural resource and forestry partners around the state that we work with. Really appreciate all of their support. And if there aren't any questions, thanks for joining us.